It's Emily Freitag, and I'm very excited to be talking today to Abbas, who runs Kiddom. And we are going to be talking specifically about their new Atlas product, but also talking generally about Kiddom and AI in action. I got to see just last week. So, Abbas, great to have you on our tour. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much, Emily. It's an honor.
So, why don't we start with you, your story? How did you come to be running Kiddom and thinking big questions about the future of products and mathematics?
Thank you for asking. I originally moved to New York to be a greedy investment banker and did my time on Wall Street and realized I did not enjoy helping rich people get richer. So, totally 180 pivoted to the classroom via Teach for America. Was a founding math teacher at a transfer high school in New York City. Transfer high school is just what we call alternative high schools in New York City. And in that experience, realized that the curriculum that was available at the time, we're talking 2009 here, was not great, especially for my students who had already been disserviced by the system. So I took it upon myself to author my own curriculum. During that experience, because my students suffered from chronic absenteeism, built some, I'm going to call them glorified spreadsheets, not ed tech for now. And in that experience, learned, teachers do a lot. Actually, there's a lot of teachers doing actually a lot of the same things, and it's burning them out. And the best moments I had with my kids was when I was able to connect with and inspire them. And the harder I worked, the more I felt like my energy was being taken away from them. And so, flash forward to Kiddom, started that with my best friend from college, Essen. So I'm co-founder of that, and we actually started as a supplemental content library connected to a gradebook in 2015. Over years of really fast, rapid free teacher growth, we did something revolutionary in ed tech. We actually talked to our users and we said, why are you using Kiddom? And they gave us, typically the first reason was, generally predictable. It's like, hey, we're looking for stuff to differentiate. We don't like, that we have to keep like taking time out of our day to build or author certain things for students who are learning at different rates and paces and clips. And then the second sort of thing that was like kind of the answer beneath the answer when you ask why 5 times is we just don't like our textbook. We don't trust it. We don't think it's rigorous enough. It's like a wide variety of different complaints about the textbook. And that was kind of like our aha moment back in 2019 about, hey, maybe the crux of the problem here is not so much that people aren't using Kiddom for the grade book component. It's that they really just need content, great content. And that's when we decided to get into the core curriculum game. Flash forward to that, we're a technology company, so obviously we're not just going to give you access to materials. We want to help you increase your ability to make use of the materials and deliver well on their intent. And as we got into the core curriculum game, we saw that there was a massive problem under the hood of what do you do next once you start teaching on this scope and sequence roller coaster. There are students who still require help. There are students who come into your class one grade level, two grade levels behind. And as that ship keeps going, as that train keeps going, teachers need a lot of support and they still find themselves taking a lot of time out of their day, despite HQIM readily available and adopted and implemented with integrity. There are still students who are being disserviced. And that's how we got to Atlas.
Great. So just to orient people, tell us kind of what's in Kiddom, like range of grades and subjects and spans, and then zoom in for us on Atlas and tell us the
Sure.
story of Atlas and what it's trying to do.
Yeah. So Kiddom is learning intelligence technology. What we do is we start with a bare bones foundation of high quality instructional materials across math, science, ELA, and we even have a social studies program. We offer those programs K to 12. And then we offer different sort of benefits for different stakeholders within the ecosystem of school systems, right? So for district leaders, they get amazing dynamic, real-time reporting and real-time, the ability to build their own reports just by talking to their data. We call it CODA, Kiddom On Demand Analysts. They also have the ability to track and receive proactive reporting on how students will perform on formative and summative assessments. And then you get that same layer down specific to a building level. And then for teachers, this is where the real meat of it is. Teachers not only get access to curriculum, but they get curriculum planning tools, the ability to clip lessons if they run out of time, the ability to generate multiple practice problem types if they feel like there's not enough practice problems in a certain lesson or in a certain unit. They get the ability to auto grade and give feedback and then check that feedback. And they also get the ability to also manipulate their own reports and generate content based on what student needs are. So it takes the sort of world of not just accessing curriculum, but implementing it. It takes that world and makes it a lot easier so that teachers can deliver on the promise of HQIM.
Great. So, Atlas, how did this come to be, and what specific job do you think it is trying to do?
Yeah. I want to give you the honest answer here. Actually, just because I was just speaking at a high school, you know, and so I've got like my teacher brain on right now. Atlas exists because teaching is getting harder, quite
Mhm.
frankly, and the tools we give teachers haven't kept up, right? So there's like a big structural problem underneath this that dedication, right? Like the calling, it can't fix, right? And I think it's a toxic term to call it a calling.
Mhm.
And every teacher, I think, will tell you this. And so the structural problem is actually differentiation, right? Differentiation is non-negotiable. You cannot teach 20, 30 kids the same way and expect the same outcomes, right? And every teacher knows this, but knowing it and actually doing it, right? Having you been in the classroom as well, right? Consistently, day after day, those are two very different things. And because real differentiation doesn't happen during the lesson, it happens after sometimes, right? And after the kids leave and after the day ends, and a teacher sitting there at the kitchen table at 9 p.m.
Mhm.
after they've just cooked food for their own kid, right? They're trying to make sense of what those 30 students understood today
Mhm.
and figure out how to rebuild instruction for tomorrow and actually deliver on what the lesson plan calls for tomorrow. That's expert work. That's insane. Like that's a lot to do. And we're
Mhm.
asking people to do it alone without support on their own. And we're asking that of teachers. I mean, we're asking them to do it every day. And
Mhm.
so Atlas closes that gap, right? And so it takes on the analytical work that lives between today's lesson and tomorrow's instruction so that teachers can show up to class having already done the analysis so that they can give their actual expertise to where it belongs, which is in front of students, and all with the pep in their step, which I think is very important. And so, what does that mean for kids? I don't know. Think about the teacher who shaped you the most, right? I'm willing to bet they noticed you, and not just as a student, as a person. They
Mhm.
could read the room. They could make the content feel like, oh, it was like written for me or authored for me, and that's a rare gift that only a few teachers are born with.
Mhm.
But that's what happens when teachers are present more often than not and not depleted. And Atlas, I think, a way of saying that is Atlas protects that job
Mhm.
of the teacher being present for their child.
Mhm. So, can you talk us through the mechanics of how it works a little bit? The curriculum it's aligned to, what part of the lesson it fits into, how you see teachers using it?
Yeah. So um, well, currently it is offered for illustrative mathematics, but more coming soon.
Mhm.
And soon it will be you will you it will be agnostic to the curriculum because it's really doing the work between again today's lesson and tomorrow's instruction. So just to walk you through it, right? Let's say today the lesson ends. Students complete a short formative assessment. I think just generally in the world of HQIM, you can generally assume at the end of class there's some sort of short check for understanding, right? It's nothing
Exit
extra. It's enough.
ticket, cool down currently in the
Yeah,
IM.
I'm trying to avoid that. The like, so in
Okay.
IM, it's called a cool down,
Yeah.
right? In other forms, in other worlds, it might be called an exit ticket,
Mhm.
right? But the idea is it takes that short formative assessment. And again, it's nothing the teacher had to build. It comes already embedded with the curriculum that was probably adopted at the district level. And in this case, it's illustrative mathematics. And that data, that cool down data or that short formative data, it goes to Atlas actually overnight. So this analysis happens. So which students understood the material, which didn't, and more importantly, what specifically tripped each up. So which specifically tripped each one up. So the idea is we have within the Kiddom engine an entire bank of decades of misconception data that we have aligned to these core curricula. And so when students are taking these cool downs, which again, I want to emphasize, actually not again, but I will emphasize, they don't have to take these cool downs on digital devices anymore, Chromebooks. They will actually be able to do it on paper, and the teacher can quick take pictures of it, and it'll complete the same work and analysis. So we analyze how the students performed, and we look at the misconceptions
And
that might
Abbas, just because I think it's important, it's right now, at least what I saw was multiple choice. Is that right? Like
correct.
it's not,
Correct.
it's
Phase
not
one,
a sure
V1,
mark. Mm-hmm.
V1 multiple choice coming soon. It's more expansive than
Okay,
that,
got it.
right? And the idea is, as we're grading these assessments, I think it's worth knowing that we are then automatically grading them, and then we're actually connecting the responses to misconceptions that would impede tomorrow's lesson,
Mm-hmm.
and then something magical happens, or as I like to say, and my team tells me not to say it, auto magically. And so what we do is, because we have our own knowledge graph of the curriculum in the Kiddom engine, we are actually able to then group those misconceptions and then find exactly where that misconception was addressed in the previous time in the curriculum. So let's say, Emily, for hypothetically, you're in a seventh grade class
Mm-hmm.
and you have demonstrated a misconception that was actually addressed in the fifth grade. So
Mm-hmm.
Kiddom will actually go back, Kiddom Atlas will go back into the fifth grade component of illustrative mathematics, look at the right activity or
Mm-hmm.
lesson, and surgically remove it, augment it, and infuse it in tomorrow's lesson plan for the teacher. And then the teacher has a choice of whether they want to differentiate in the moment as
Mm-hmm.
a reteach right in the beginning, if they want to conduct a small group activity, or if they want to even totally assign it to a block of the students who demonstrated that misconception in a separate intervention class. Because as you know, sometimes school systems have a dedicated block where they're supposed to go on a thing
Mm-hmm.
or get engaged with certain sort of intervention activities, what we call the tier 2 or the tier 3,
Mm-hmm.
right? In this case, Atlas is actually generating those materials directly from the tier 1 body of work, right? And
It's
so,
generating the student activity, so kind of the worksheet or whatever the problem set that kids would be working on. And then it's also generating the teacher manual equivalent for that lesson. It's
yeah,
not generating, it's not an AI tutor. I want to just make sure we're distinguishing sort of
it is not an AI tutor. It is
what
there is
it's doing
no
and what it's not.
chatbots.
Yeah,
There's
there's no
no there's
chatbot, there's no even like video or tech delivered product. It's really just generating customized guidance for the teacher.
No screen time, only real time. Right.
Mhm.
I should write that down. I'm feeling that might have been a good one to
Only
keep.
screen time that I saw was the cool down. That
Yeah,
the kid, and you're saying sometimes you could do that without screens, but I think right now,
Paper Screen is available in July. We're
okay.
going to drop it, which is called Paper Score.
Mhm.
So students will just be able to conduct that same cool down, complete that same cool down on paper,
Mhm.
because paper is very important not only in the ELA class but in the math class. And there's learning science behind that specifically states students retain more when they're writing, especially at the younger years in K5. And we are going to be bringing Atlas down to the K5 level. Currently, it's only available at 6.8 math, but we're also going to be bringing it downwards as well, right? Because there's really important work that needs to be done accelerating students down at the third grade level, fourth grade level, even at the first grade level, right? So yeah, the idea is, and let me just clarify that cool down that you've brought up as a multiple choice, right? I think it's worth mentioning that too many programs say that they have assessments built in, and too often those assessments are just glorified worksheets.
Mhm.
They aren't rooted in psychometrics. They aren't designed to bridge daily learning to grade level summatives. That is the difference with our cooldowns, because
Mhm.
with Atlas they are, right. And so when we capture that misconception and we are generating this new content, we're actually generating it for the teacher or the interventionist or the specialist or the coach to then go in there and readdress that misconception. And now, some schedules in school systems will enable the student to get that intervention or that acceleration content prior to tomorrow's lesson.
Hmm.
Sometimes it happens after tomorrow's lesson, but the idea is by the end of that day, you're stamping every student at grade level and very carefully nudging them and keeping them on grade level through the micro interactions that you have through the course of the school year, right? So instead of your lesson, your tier one happening in a certain class, and then you go to your intervention time, where you often take a diagnostic, and that diagnostic puts you on a separate track that might be disconnected from the tier one track
Right.
that your teacher is on. These two are speaking to each other in Atlas, right? It is very rare for your tier two intervention product to understand what happened in your tier one
One.
class,
Sure.
right? And so we're trying to break that gap through Kiddom Atlas.
I saw it certainly seems like it's designed for flexible teacher use. So teachers then have a lot of judgments that they need to make on what to do, but it's supporting them in some novel ways. So, for example, automatically generating the groupings for students and saying, here's what this group needs to work on, here's what this group needs to work on, here's what this group needs to work on. The teachers that I saw using it have a high degree of trust that those groups are pretty sound. And so we saw small groups within a tier one math block, but I hear you saying you could also have a use case where they're using it in intervention later that
Correct.
day or the next day.
That's correct. And even when we generate the groups, Emily, we know that teachers know their students best.
Sure.
Maybe the student had an off day, right?
Mhm.
Maybe something happened, and as a teacher, you probably know because they walked into your classroom weird, right? So you can move the student out of the group,
Mhm.
right? You're not locked in. And again, in these other intervention programs disconnected from tier one, you
Mhm.
kind of locked in, and right.
Mhm.
So we hear stories all the time about students who kind of hacked these programs and they don't try and on these certain sort of like interims, and then the last moment they like crush it, right? Or the vice versa, right?
Mhm.
In this case, the teacher remains in control,
Mhm.
but they're supported by this invisible cloak of infrastructure around tier one, tier two, tier three.
Got it. Can you level up a little bit and tell us how you think about AI's valid roles and valuable roles and where you see less valuable roles? I know you have strong opinions about this, and want to give you a chance to share them.
Um, so I think AI is really great, and let me just abstract here a little bit, right? AI is technology, right? And technology, and we're talking about not technology like paper. We're talking about compute technology, right? Computers are really good at this computing thing. They're really good at crunching, right? Humans, we're really good at connecting, inspiring, not being the infinite patient tutor, right? Like the tutor that's just gonna wait for the kid to fine, or I'll just like sit here blinking, waiting for you until you become a self-starter. Because apparently you're a self-starter. All kids are self-starters, not right. So the idea I think that we have here at Kiddom is that, any technology, including AI, should honor the social sort of bond and contract that teachers and students have, and it should be designed to work through that contract rather than around it, right? And at Kiddom, our mission is to build technology that unlocks potential for all teachers and learners,
Mhm.
because we believe learning is a social phenomenon. We believe that the teacher is very vital to the role of learning, right?
Mhm.
And also, let's not forget, and I think technologists sometimes do, their children are different from adults, right? Like they're very different. They're learning who they are as they're growing. They're learning who they're gonna be as they interact with other children
Mhm.
of their age and groups, and friend circles. And so it's very important, I think, to ensure that the social nature
Mhm.
of the school day is remains sacred.
Mhm.
And we believe that through Kiddom Atlas, we not only do we do that justice, but we also honor the instructional intent of many of these HQIM programs, which are built around inquiry. discussion, discourse, and conceptual understanding while balancing out the procedural fluency, which is so important to get to automaticity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we are trying to do the background, unsexy work of understanding what happened so that we can prepare you for tomorrow. And
Mm-hmm.
that is why, we're not invited to talk on the big stage to do this whole thing because that work is unsexy.
Um, one last question on Atlas before we go to impact. Um, it's a partnership, as I understand it, with Achievement Network and Teaching Lab and Kiddom. Can you tell us just about how that co-creation has unfolded and the roles everyone plays?
Yeah. So two really well-respected organizations in the world of assessment and professional learning, right? And so the CEOs of those two teams, along with my co-founder and I, we got together and we really were trying to understand what, like, HQIM is a thing, assessments eventually they'll become closer and closer to the core curriculum that districts adopt, right? But what happens in the middle? What is that sort of implementation gap, right? And ANET, having been an interim assessment company until they've had their pivot as well and realize that you can't just do the interim because it needs to inform,
Mhm.
right? We came together with ANET, and ANET offers amazing, data on misconceptions.
Mhm.
And they also author some great assessments themselves. So the partnership with ANET is directly on the assessment component and the authoring component, which helps us then determine which misconceptions, which then helps us then understand where do we go on the curriculum to generate the content that's needed for tomorrow's lesson. That's
Mhm.
a very like harmonious partnership, right?
And
Teaching Lab
one
brings in
small note on that, just back to Atlas for a second. The cool downs, I think, include questions from that day's lesson, but also
correct.
next day's lesson, right?
Correct.
So
Because
really great.
we're trying to do the very careful balance of assessing today, but preparing for tomorrow,
Mhm.
right? Which is an actual unspoken, but very real reality for teachers, right? I mean,
Those are like psychometrically well-designed questions from ANET that are
that
supporting
we
that
infuse
learning.
into the Kiddom Atlas experience. That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
And that's why these are so important because they work.
Hmm.
And they're actually quite spot on.
Hmm.
Aside from like yeah, we're limited to some multiple choice. Every once in a while, a kid will pick a multiple choice and they just guess, right? Well, guess what? When you get grouped into a thing, and you're like, wait, why did I get into this group? I know this. That kind of it fixes itself, right? So we're like, sometimes some people in like the ivory tower are like, yeah, but multiple choice is like, yeah, but there's a teacher in the room, right?
Hmm.
And the student will advocate for themselves. Trust us,
Hmm.
right? That's the reality of the situation. On the teaching lab side, so they bring in the research chops as
Hmm.
well as the professional learning, right? So in our partnership with District 11, where we were co-designing this beautiful experience, it was really their relationship and their professional learning that drove and instilled, this idea that Kiddom Atlas is the way that we're going to be utilizing and incorporating the illustrative mathematics curriculum. And then now that we have gone through a full school year cycle
Hmm.
with amazing data,
Hmm.
and I could talk to you about that
We're getting
if
there.
you'd like.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, I'm a nerd. But yeah, like now that we have the data to validate that this is worth a larger study, we're talking with Johns Hopkins University and David Steiner and team about doing a 2-year study where we actually look at, what is this thing going to do? And now if we can have a cohort of just folks using illustrative mathematics versus Kiddom and Atlas for illustrative mathematics, what is that going to look like? How are teachers going to perceive their mastery of the materials? How are students going to perform, achieve, and grow with these materials in
Mhm.
hand? So we're really excited about getting that work underway. Hopefully next year.
Great.
Nothing is signed yet, but I'm optimistic that we're going to have a phenomenal next 2 years to look forward to.
So, anything you want to show us about how this works in action?
Sure. Let's put on our imagination caps and pretend my name is not Abbas anymore. It is Jordan Dawson. Okay. And Jordan Dawson is a lovely teacher who's utilizing Kiddom Atlas for their middle school math class, right? And so you're looking just at the simple welcome greeting to Jordan. They're greeted with hey, here's what's going on. Here's your next lesson, and just some Atlas activities, which we define as some of the small, group misconception work that we have to do, right? And then we're grouping the students based on some of the misconceptions that they've demonstrated and that need to be addressed, right? So first, we're just gonna go into the lesson. This is just honestly, this is just Kiddom. Okay, this is not really Kiddom Atlas right now.
Mm.
So in Kiddom, you get your illustrative mathematics experience. All the sort of components of the lesson are laid out nicely and neatly on the left, easy to navigate. You get your warm up, you get your activities, your synthesis, your cool down, and all of it's ready to utilize at your disposal. You get your slides,
Mhm.
wonderful, nice. They can be projected. They've got the notes right in them. So if you're using presenter view and you want to, really say the thing to the T, you can. And then, here you have your Atlas activities. Now, this is where actually like the magic happens, right? So in this sort of view, you can see from yesterday's experience what happened, right? So 12 students added instead of scaled to find equivalent ratios. What does that mean? Well, here's the actual misconception. And now here's my guidance on what to do with it. And then here's what I'm looking for with these guided questions. And then this is actually what I'm going to be assigning to recheck, right? And then on this side, I've got another misconception, right? So now when I go to my create activities,
Mhm.
I can then determine how do I want to handle this, right? And this is great feedback that we actually got directly from our pilot in New York City District 11. Originally this was designed to generate the intervention content and slide right into the warm up.
Mhm.
But then we understood, hey, different schools have different ways of doing this, and
Mhm.
actually many school systems actually they want to keep the entire lesson sacred to tier one instruction. So infusing intervention content in during tier one time as a warm up might not be appropriate.
Mhm.
Oh, that's great feedback. Let's build this out, right? And that's the sort of benefit of being a tech company. We get to just deliver on the moment and build for what the teachers need and also what the school system's vision is for brilliant teaching and learning, right? So yeah, you can have your small group activities. You can do a whole reteach, individual work, a spiral review, small group. You go into your small group. Here you have your small groups already built out for you. You
Mhm.
could even see, you can merge. You have a bunch of controls. We
Mhm.
really believe in the autonomy for the teacher. And then we've got some did not take cooldowns here. We can do some work with them. But here's the cool part, right? I think like I've been using the word intervention a lot, right? But what about enrichment? What
Mhm.
about the students who crushed it,
Mhm.
right? We can generate extension activities for them
Mhm.
and have them moving forward. Oftentimes, and I'm guilty of this. When I was a teacher, right, I even in my exams and summative assessments, I had a picture where I was like, draw what you feel like today,
Mhm.
for the students who finished early. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I do
Mhm.
know what I'm doing now, and I think students need to be pushed, right? And so if you're going forward, if you're a high flyer, you should be rewarded with some stuff that pushes your thinking, right? And then you create your activities, and then well, bam, magically the activities are being created and generated, and then
Using the
you
curriculum that you have.
correct using the illustrative mathematics curriculum, it's generating the materials, and then I could go ahead and print them,
Mhm.
right? If I want to, I can have them completed on a Chromebook. Really, it's up to the teacher, their classroom, their teaching style. And then the work continues, Emily. So we go back to the curriculum, we go to our next lesson, we teach it, we deliver the cool down,
Mhm.
and then the cycle repeats. It's really that simple. But
Mhm.
there's a lot, it's like an iceberg, right? You're only seeing 10% of it in the UI,
Yeah.
right? The real work of it is being done on the back end, which is I'm going to come back to what I said. Let the computers do the computing, and
Mhm.
let the teachers do the teaching, right?
Mhm.
And that's really the beauty of Kiddom Atlas.
Awesome. Well, let's go a little deeper on this question of impact. How do you define the success of Kiddom? What should be, or I'm sorry, not Kiddom. Let's stay on Atlas. What should be different for people who use Atlas? And then what do you know about how it's doing against those expectations?
Yeah. Look, I'll say what first one thing just on the topic because I have to because Kiddom is technically three businesses in one, right? Like we're technically an author, a publisher, but we're also a tech company. We're actually a tech company first, right? And tech companies, we are notoriously bad at, in the world of ed tech of propagating true impact, right? We talk about utilization, usage, right? Assignments, submitted, etc. What does that tell a school district?
Hmm.
Yeah, they're using it, right? And then how does that help students grow, matriculate, et cetera? So I just want to comment, I'm hyper aware of that.
Hmm.
And the outcome we're after is actually quite simple. It's better student results.
Hmm.
We're very specific about how we get there, right? And the challenge in education has never been a lack of data. Teachers have data, but what they don't have is enough time to turn that data into action before the moment passes, right? You get the data, you'll always get the data. It's
Hmm.
just what you might not be able to execute against that data, right?
Hmm.
So how do we measure it? We look at teacher behavior, instructional decisions, student achievement together, not
Hmm.
in isolation. Because student outcomes, they don't happen in a vacuum, right? We're dealing with human beings here. Actually, we're dealing with younger human beings here, so it's even more complicated, right? And so they're the result of specific practices, and we want to know what's actually driving the results. And so the results are real, and what makes them meaningful is their specificity, right? So students in classrooms where teachers used Atlas intentionally outperformed their peers by 10% in grade six, 16.4% in seventh grade, and nearly 7% in eighth grade. In grade seven, that translates to roughly five, almost 6 additional months of learning. But the
This
numbers I keep,
state test,
sorry,
or this is on the
this
Atlas
is specific.
assessment?
This is specifically within the Atlas
Okay.
cooldowns, right?
Hmm.
We are still waiting for the state tests. I wish I had them on my hand today.
Hmm.
Graduation is happening in New York City today, so there's one sort of celebration
Um,
factor, but
mhm.
yeah, but we don't have the results yet. I hope to report back on them soon, and maybe we can even do an add-on or a follow-on to this. I'm confident they're going to be good,
Mhm.
but the numbers I keep coming back to are also the behavioral ones, right? Like, so teachers who graded than 75% more than 75% of their outcomes saw a 12% increase in student performance. And in addition, teachers who graded more than 75% actually of assignments and graded within 3 days of submission saw an 18% increase. And teachers who use Kiddom three or more times a week
Mhm.
outperformed peers who used it once a week by 11%.
Mhm.
And this is so super cool and nerdy because what this tells us is that this is the mechanism, right? It's not just that Atlas works; it's
Mhm.
that those specific teacher behaviors, which we've been saying for some time in this industry, right? That we should be giving more feedback, we should be grading, we should be giving students their work back so that they can feel confident raising their hands, right? It's
Mhm.
those specific behaviors and staying close to the data that's actually driving these outcomes, which is great. So like the product actually validates the behaviors,
Mhm.
and the behaviors in the product actually increases achievement, and that's a match made in heaven.
Thank you,
Cool.
Abbas, for joining this tour and sharing this view and your perspective. And we look forward to continuing to learn together.
Love that. Love that. Thank you for conducting this tour, and thanks for including me in it.